Welcome to Maysember. If you're not sure what Maysember is, dictionary.com actually does have a definition for it. Maysember is the manic time of year when parents find themselves drowning in end-of-school activities, sporting events, concerts, awards, teacher appreciation days, graduation rituals, bake sales, summer camp paperwork, and Memorial Day plans. As the Holderness family explained, it's like December without the fun. I've heard some refer to it quite simply as mayhem. Get it? For many of us who are actively parenting or are somehow adjacent to parenting or grandparenting or just generally in the orbit of people with school-age kids, it can be an overwhelming time of year. Think about our Shabbat just last week, on which we honored our graduating high school seniors on Friday night and then celebrated our confirmation class of 10th graders on Saturday night. And that's in the midst of their AP tests and final exams and end-of-year dinners and graduations and the formulation of various travel plans. Sometimes the craziness of the end of the school year feels a little bit like wandering through a wilderness. It's hectic and a little disorienting. You're not quite sure how you'll get from here to there. It's oddly dusty and there's sand and everything somehow. Parenting, too. Parenting is in general is a sort of a journey through a wilderness. No matter how many baby books you read, the experience of bringing home an infant entrusted into your care is also quite overwhelming and scary. No matter how prepared you might think you are, you realize very quickly that you have no idea what you're doing. But as humans, we tend to meet the moment. We try, we adapt, we grow, and over time we learn and figure it out, making our way through. Some might even move from muddling to flourishing. I'm particularly conscious of this journey of parenting today, as today I celebrate the 15th anniversary of becoming a father and a rabbi. It's a story for another sermon. While wandering through the wilderness can indeed be overwhelming and scary, it can also be an opportunity to experience something different, something generative, perhaps to discover a new way of thinking about the world around us or our lives more generally. There's something about the wilderness that allows for an opening up as well. This week, in our Torah portion, we begin the book of Numbers, in Hebrew called Bamidbar, or in the wilderness. It's worth noting that the Israelites have been wandering for a while at this point, nothing new, but in Hebrew, the book of Numbers is known as Bamidbar, the book of the wilderness. When I was in college, I remember reading the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer in the Old English, which follows an unlikely group from all walks of Old English society traveling together on a journey in which they discover all sorts of new insights about themselves, their roles in society, and their connections to each other as well. This was also the first time I remember learning the term liminal space. You've all heard it at this point, I'm sure. Arnold van Gennep, in his book, The Rites of Passage, argued that societies develop rituals to mark the transition from one state to the next, from childhood to adulthood, for example, or from being single to being married. And they involve 3 stages. The first is separation, a symbolic break with the past. The third is incorporation, re-entering society with a new identity. Between the two is the crucial stage of transition, when, having said goodbye to who you were, but not yet hello to who you are about to become, you are recast, reborn, refashioned. Van Gennep used the term liminal from the Latin word for threshold to describe this second state when you are in a kind of no man's land between the old and the new. That is clearly what the wilderness signifies for Israel, liminal space between Egypt and the Promised Land. There, Israel is reborn, no longer a group of escaping slaves, but a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. As Rabbi Jonathan Sachs taught, the desert, a no man's land with no settled populations, no cities, no civilizational order, is the place where Jacob's descendants, alone with God, cast off one identity and assume another. Indeed, the wilderness is the place in which we receive Torah, we receive revelation, as we'll celebrate next Thursday night on Shavuot. Jewish commentators through the centuries have also drawn a connection between the word for wilderness, midbar, with the root dalet bet resh, daber, and the word for speech, midaber. As Rabbi Sachs explains, it is in the wilderness that the Israelites hear revelation, the word or speaking of God. Fundamental to Judaism is the belief that God cannot be seen. For every ancient faith but one, the gods were present in the phenomena of nature. The sun, the stars, the sky, the sea, they were visible, things seen. In Israel, a revolutionary idea reached expression that God was beyond nature. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place. The vast universe is no more than the work of God's fingers. Everything we can see is not God, but merely the work of God. Hence the repeated prohibitions in Judaism against making an image or icon. To Judaism, the idea that God is visible is idolatry. God is beyond the totality of things seen. Rabbi Sachs continues, God who transcends nature is close, because God exists not in things seen, but in words heard. While almost every other civilization has been a culture of the eye, Judaism is a culture of the ear, of words, speech, listening, interpreting, understanding, heeding. When we undertake the Exodus and wander into the world in order to found a new society elsewhere, we discover the world as the desert. The flight leads nowhere until we stop in order to find our bearings beyond the world. When the world has become desert, humans are at last in the solitude in which they can hear thunderingly the voice of the Spirit with its urgent whispering that has already driven and rescued them from Sheol, the domain of death. In the desert, God spoke to the leader and their tribes. In the desert, by listening to the voice, by accepting its offer, and by submitting to its command, they had at last reached life and became the people chosen by God. In the book of Bamidbar, the Israelites undergo a pretty radical transformation. In this parsha, Moses counts them, taking a census in preparation for taking the promised land in battle, as they get closer to their destination. But as the book goes on, things take a little bit of a dark turn. The Israelites camped just outside of Canaan send scouts to survey the land and report back on what they find. And when they return, nearly all of them bring a message of doom, gloom, and impassable odds. As punishment for their lack of faith, the generation of Israelites counted at the beginning of the book of Numbers are condemned to perish in the wilderness. At the end of the book, there is a second counting, this time 40 years later, of a new generation preparing to finally enter the promised land. Indeed, the book of Numbers in English gets its name from a Talmudic reference to this book as Chumash HaPekudim, the book of counting. The community God and Moses count at the beginning and at the end of this book are radically different. Not only are they literally different people, but they are a people who are different as well. They entered the wilderness still locked into the mindset of slavery, not believing that they were worthy or capable of thriving in freedom, unsure and afraid of how to proceed. But by the end of the book, a new generation, born in the wilderness, born in freedom, arises, full of hope and heart and imagination. They are shaped by the vast experience of the wilderness, not by the narrowness of Egypt. As we navigate our own personal or collective wildernesses, how will we face the challenges that arise? How will we meet the moment? In what ways might we too stretch and learn and grow in new ways we couldn't have imagined? Perhaps if we open ourselves to the possibility inherent in wandering, inherent in the wilderness, perhaps we'll discover new things about ourselves and our own capacity to live, to love, and to learn. Shabbat Shalom.